Hey everybody, my name is Maya. Welcome to my channel if you're new, and welcome back if you are returning. I have a question to pose today, one that I don't necessarily have the answer to, but we'll be exploring for the sake of it. And that question is, what makes a relationship in media, whether that be books, television, movies, etc., what makes relationships good? And I think what's really interesting is there's a lot of specificity that needs to be addressed within that question. For example, what kind of relationship is this? Is this a romantic relationship? Is it a mentor relationship? Friendship, platonic, familial, etc. What is it? And secondly, what qualifies as a good relationship? What does that even mean? Does it mean that the characters have a lot of chemistry, so we just root for them off the bat? Does it mean that they go through conflict together and are challenged and make each other better? Does good mean relationships that are realistic and flawed and imperfect? I don't know. Today I want to kind of dive into that, and because relationships are imperfect and not scripted and occur randomly and often inconveniently, I didn't write any notes or do any research for this video whatsoever. This is just me as a reader, as a consumer of movies and media of all kinds, talking about what I like in fictional relationships, what make them work in my opinion, and what fictional relationships teach us about our relationships in real life. For the purposes of this video, I will be talking about romantic relationships, although probably a lot of what I say can apply and will apply to platonic relationships and friendships. To me, what makes a relationship good, a romantic relationship in fiction good, is when characters are challenged and build upon one another. And I think the best example I can think of in this is going to be Anne and Gilbert from the Anne with an E / Anne of Green Gables series. Anne and Gilbert grow up as childhood friends, although Gilbert is kind of smitten with her throughout their childhood. They grow into adulthood together. They're both incredibly intelligent, they're competitive, and because they're competitive, they challenge one another to be better academically. They're also very supportive of one another and their individual pursuits. Anne loves storytelling, and Gilbert is super willing and interested to hear those stories and encourage her to tell them. They don't try to change one another necessarily. That change is passive. I think that relationships of any kind change us on some fundamental level, but the difference here is that the change isn't purposeful. You're not trying to make someone a different person, you're just helping them to become a better and older and more mature version of themselves. Anne and Gilbert also maintain a sense of childish play and love and mutual respect throughout their relationship, which I think is awesome. But then on the flip side of that relationship, which I think is really healthy and represents what we should look for in real life, I really like the relationship between Marianne and Connell in Normal People, which is arguably an incredibly unhealthy relationship. I did make a video on this, so feel free to check that out, but essentially Normal People follows our two main characters, Marianne and Connell, throughout secondary school and into university. They're in Ireland, so it's very fun for me as an American to just university sounds so much cooler than college, gotta say. They have so many flaws in their relationship and so much difficulty with communication to the point where I was really tempted to throw the book at the wall, but then I remembered it was a hardcover and those are expensive. So if their relationship is so flawed and so imperfect and so really honestly realistic, what did I like about it? Because it definitely wasn't escapism. I liked how raw it was. I liked that it was rough around the edges, and I liked that the characters were forced to compromise and that they would make mistakes and that they'd have to fix those mistakes if they wanted to stay together. I liked that they didn't stay together throughout the whole book. I loved the ending, which I won't spoil here, but essentially comes to the conclusion that they both need to grow in their own lives. I loved the realism and the truth that was infused into that story because I was reared on The Hunger Games and Divergent, where you're 16 and in a huge dystopia, and oh my gosh, this sounds familiar. The difference is you meet this very brooding, very toxically masculine boy that you fall in love with who just doesn't show his emotions. I'm not talking about PETA, I love PETA. So if I'm capable of enjoying relationships in books that are both healthy and unhealthy, what's the distinction between good? What is it? I don't know. I think at the end of the day, what makes a relationship interesting for a reader and invigorating and intriguing is it has to be complex. There has to be a fundamental flaw in the relationship that the characters work together to overcome. But in working together, it's equally important that the characters develop separately. because that's real life, or it should be. Apart from the fact that there needs to be a flaw in the relationship that the characters work together and separately to overcome, there needs to be some sort of story that belongs to just them, that is unique. Whether that be a meet cute, or a friends to lovers, or a fake dating trope, a lot of these tropes are effective in allowing us to have some sense of excitement, some sense of urgency in the character's relationship. Why would you go to a theme park on a first date despite the fact that theme parks are really fun and sometimes expensive? Well, because it creates a sense of adrenaline, and then the person associates you with that feeling of adrenaline and excitement. Does that make sense? Paraphrased psychology. So I think that risk factor, that there has to be something on the line, is also important in media relationships. This is why Rachel and Ross getting together so soon in Friends was kind of problematic for the screenwriters, and why they continued to break up throughout the seasons.
Friends producer Kevin S. Bright has said, quote, "When the first kiss happened, we go, wow, the air has kind of gone out of the balloon. There wasn't that sexual tension anymore." To this day, TV writers are haunted by the moonlighting curse, the pervasive idea that once the couple gets together, the spark is gone.
They got together too quickly. No longer were we investing something in them. No longer were there extreme stakes. So it was just kind of a boring relationship from that point on. But at the same time, isn't that how healthy relationships in the world should work? But that doesn't fly for TV shows, right? As I mentioned, they have to have some risk factor. There have to be stakes that you are putting on the characters. But that's not how relationships work in real life. I mean, of course, there will always be conflict of some sort, and that's okay, and that's normal, and that's human, and that's something that will allow you as an individual and you as the group of people in a relationship to grow. In my mind, healthy relationships should be based on trust and joy and love and respect for one another. They should not be based on fears about cheating or jealousy or manipulation or anything like that, which are really common tropes in media.
Oh, I am so mad, Ross. I don't think I've ever been this angry.
What about the time I said we were on a break?
The biggest thing to me is vulnerability, and we don't get that specifically in YA novels. We often get the dark, brooding, hyper-masculine lead who just does not open up to the female character because it's usually a heterosexual relationship. Consider Tris and Four. She essentially has to go and fix him throughout the series because of his past trauma. And I think it's great that that character is working through his trauma. I don't think it's great that the female lead is being made to fix it for him. I'm looking around and I just saw the Selection series, which I love, and I get that it's meant to be like a dystopian bachelor, but like at the same time, pitting girls against girls to get a guy, that's not a healthy message for romantic relationships or female platonic relationships. Sorry, I had to turn the light on. The sun is setting too quickly for my taste. For an example, even further back in history, relationships in Louisa May Alcott's Little Women are also incredibly unhealthy. And I'm not even talking about the part that she had to add where Jo gets married to a character we literally do not care about and Laurie ends up with Amy, which I actually think is okay. I'm talking about the fact that Jo knew that Laurie liked her this whole time, and instead of setting clear boundaries, they just avoided having a conversation. Until it was too late, and then his heart was broken and their friendship was fragmented for a real long time. My point here, and I could go on and on, like if you wanted me to bring up Twilight, no, we're not going to bring up Twilight. No. I'm having a good day. No Twilight. We get such an influx of unhealthy relationships. The ratio is completely off, and the teen/YA romance genre is just flooded with unhealthy relationships. Does that make them not good relationships in terms of entertainment and media? No. Like, I think The Selection is freaking amazing. I think it's so entertaining, super flawed, absolutely, but I do derive entertainment from it. That said, is it a healthy relationship, and is it setting good standards for people of all ages and all genders when it comes to any sort of romantic relationship? Something interesting that I do want to mention, though, is a lot of books that are in the teen YA romance genre that are showing healthy relationships or are getting closer to where I hope we will be eventually are LGBTQ plus books. And I think that's because the LGBTQ community doesn't buy into toxic masculinity for the most part. I think that there's a lot less of an emphasis on gender norms and just really stereotypical things that often come with heterosexual normal romantic relationships in books, films, movies, etc. So I just definitely wanted to point that out because I do think that that is a subsection of the genre that is starting to really develop and address this problem head on and make it so that teens and YA readers have a greater expanse of things to read, a greater range of healthy and unhealthy relationships. How does this affect us? We are acquiring all that we know culturally about relationships from the adult figures in our lives, whether those be parents or guardians, and the media we interact with possibly more when we're entering our teenage years because of rebelliousness, woohoo, then arguably I would think that it would have a huge impact on the way we perceive relationships and go about them in our own lives. If you say hey with one Y, then it's platonic. If you say hey with two Ys, it means that they like you. If you say hey with three Ys, they are in love. I don't think so. We receive a lot of unhealthy relationship advice, honestly, from YA books, whether it's malintentioned or not, which I think most of the time it's not. I think it's just people who want to create entertainment and media and want to be content creators and that don't really necessarily think about the impact that the messages they're sending are affecting children, you know what I mean? Like Twilight is a prime example of this. I'm still not going to talk about it because I don't want to. So, yeah. At the end of the day, media is not responsible for relationship problems we have, but I definitely think that especially in our younger teenage years and YA stages, if you're a reader, definitely media impacts the way we perceive relationships and go about forming them. Especially when I was younger, books were a huge refuge for me when I was like 12, 13, 14, and I definitely took a lot of cues from characters in my books because they were my friends, right? So I think that YA media and teen media in particular needs to be a little bit more responsible in how they portray relationships while at the same time providing us a range of unhealthy to healthy relationships. We need a combination. We need to see what's good and what's not so good and how we can implement the good even further in our own lives. That is all I have for you guys today. I would love to hear what your favorite relationships are, particularly in books, but in media of any kind, and why you like them. What makes a good relationship for you? A fictional romantic relationship. What do you think is missing from the market, especially in terms of representation and inclusivity in romance novels? And if you have any recommendations for me, please let me know. I'd be delighted to read them. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. It was probably mildly incoherent, and I do apologize for that, but you know, I just wanted to talk, and that's what I did. With that, I will say adieu, and I will see you all again on Tuesday. Stay safe, especially if you're in the US.